Well, the latest reports are showing, unfortunately, a lot of car buyers are making a decision not to buy. They're holding off. Cost of living is going through the roof, and dealers are literally starting to panic because they're not selling vehicles, cars, trucks, SUVs the way they wanted to. Sales are down, and we'll talk about that based on Cox Automotive Report, the latest here in April of 2024. We'll look back last month and we'll look back a year ago. Good morning, my savory seeds of sunshine. Welcome back, and today we're going to talk about what's happening in a car market, why dealers are starting to panic, and what they're doing to try to counter that, but it's not enough. It's clearly all they're doing is slowing the bleeding. They can't turn off the taps, and unfortunately, buyers are making a decision. They can't afford the full-size SUVs. They can't afford the luxury cars. They can't afford the full-size trucks, and yes, sales are drastically down on trucks, not just month over month, but year over year. So we'll talk about that. Let's get into some of the analysis here from Cox Automotive as we look at some of the numbers, because the hard data tells you very much the truth. Cost of living crisis is through the roof. It's a lot worse in Canada, according to statistics, with higher unemployment rates, more people deciding to go with personal business rather than working for the crown, essentially, because a big part of the overall workforce in Canada is driven based on working directly for the federal and provincial governments, which means private business is taking a hit due to overtaxation. Cost of living is a challenge. In the US, there's a lot of instability there too, and while they're definitely seeing a much better job loss number and statistic, it still means that there's a lot of people looking for work. A lot of people don't have the money to spend on those extra vehicles and cars and goods. Cost of living is high in general across the board, and that's impacting car sales brutally. So you want some statistics? This April, since last April, we've actually got inventory levels climb by about 46%. But did you also know that sales has gone down 2.2% year over year? And we've even seen a massive decline of almost 7% from this month to the same time last month. So we're clearly seeing a big drop off on the sales of new vehicles, cars, trucks, SUVs, and people are making a strong decision. What do they really need? Do I need that big full-size truck just to get around and drive the kids to school? No, a lot of people are making that hard decision now. Sure, while a lot of these dealers are offering up incentives, you're seeing it all over the place now. 0% truck month. We're seeing all these things where they're offering out, 2.9% APR. We're seeing $10,000 off, $12,000, $15,000 off, if you would believe it, on the price of some of these trucks. But the sad reality is we've seen this. I've showed you in some other videos where these trucks are so highly priced in the first place. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen prices climb as much as 30, 40, or almost 50% from where they were back in 2019. People are just stuck. They can't tolerate that. They can't absorb that extra cost. Wages haven't gone up to the same level. We haven't seen wage increases. I don't know about you, but I haven't personally had a wage increase that takes me up 40% in the last 3 years. If I'm lucky, I'm getting an extra 2 or 3% year over year. It doesn't even come close to absorbing the increase in inflation that we're seeing in this last little bit. But let's look at some of the numbers. And basically we're talking, let's look at, first of all, month over month, because that's a short-term glitch. But year over year is a bigger telling story. And we're talking about mid-size cars. Now, we know mid-size cars are losing the flavor. Losing the flavor in a way that, think about cars like Ford Taurus, even luxury segments, BMW 5 Series or Audi, S5s, and mid-size vehicles. Dodge has them, the 300. And you name it, they're all over. There are mid-size cars, but it's a dying segment. People have less and less appetite for the mid-size car. I personally love the mid-size car. That's what I grew up with. And I think they offer a great blend of size, practicality, usually performance. They handle better than full-size SUVs. And so they're a great thing, but they're going away. They're dying. And as a result, what we're seeing in the mid-size segment, year over year, so this year to last year, we've seen a 13.9% decrease, and month over month, about a 4.7% decrease. Yes, in fact, they have continually losing market share. It's a dying segment for sure, no doubt about it. And honestly, a lot of manufacturers are starting to shy away and producing less and manufacturing and designing less mid-sized vehicles. It just isn't the market for it. Then how about compact cars? Well, Compact cars. This is one of the biggest telltale stories. Compact sales. Contrary to what we're seeing in full-size SUVs, full-size trucks, and we'll get to those numbers here shortly, compact cars, we know that people are struggling. We know this. Cost of living, gas prices are up. People want something a little more frugal. Either they're looking at hybrid vehicles, they're looking at smaller compact vehicles, small SUVs, small, small, small. That's the answer here. And people are looking and enjoying the smaller vehicles. And as a result, some of those vehicle sales are doing really well in the subcompact space. Why do you think like Toyota Corolla, Corolla Cross, vehicles like that? Even Honda, the Civics, or even the smaller Hondas, HRVs, CRVs, we're seeing vehicles in the subcompact classes of vehicles that are doing much better. Even the little garbage cars, tin cans like the Chevy Spark and vehicles like that are often doing a lot better than some of their bigger counterparts because people want something that's cheaper to buy into. That's the main thing with high cost of vehicles at trucks at $70,000 or $80,000. If they can get their hands on a car for $20,000 to get them to do the same thing, people are making that decision. It's also easier on fuel, lower insurance costs, and it's just a lot more palatable, if you will. Sorry, pardon the language. But compact car sales, if you would believe it, okay, they're down about 8.2% month over month. So from this month to the last month, a lot of that has to do with tax season. We're into spring. People finally ran out of money, and now there's a sort of a flatline period. We know that typically once tax season is wrapped up, people hustle out there, buy really quickly, and now we're sort of moving out of that space, and what you're starting to find are sales are starting to slump, and in a big way. And dealers are starting to panic. They're getting really nervous, and that's where all these incentives are coming from. But conversely, when we look year over year, sales on compact cars are actually up 14.1%. So where we saw some of these big increases in the last few years, people responded that knee-jerk. They decided, you know what, I need a compact car. I need something cheap and dirty. And so we're up 14.1% year over year on compact car sales. Compact SUVs and crossovers are another conversation because, again, it brings the practicality. The cost up front isn't quite as high as a compact car, although they're a little bit higher generally with the all-wheel drive systems, a little bigger, a little bit more technology and safety aspects in a lot of their vehicles. So those also in the compact SUV crossover segment are actually up 16.4% year over year. Again, that knee-jerk response, we saw the same thing in the compact car segment. We see from last year to this year, we've seen an overall increase of 16.4%. But month over month, we're seeing a 6.3% decline. So yet again, we're seeing a decline from last month to this month. That tells tales, and that's why dealers are starting to scramble. Let's face it, they're throwing incentives upon incentives. Better APRs, we're getting much better lending rates. Even for people that are slightly subprime, we're getting better lending rates today. Even though banks are somehow tightening up some of their reins, we're still getting better rates for those that qualify. And we're also getting better incentives, more discounts. Not to say that these prices are where they should be yet. I don't believe the market is corrected. And I think all of you know that as well, right? We've talked about that on many videos, how we're nowhere near where we should be yet. Prices have gone up so much in 3 years, and now these $2,000 off after they jacked it up $18,000 or $25,000 in the last 3 years, it's not enough to compensate. But the numbers are the numbers. So let's look at another one, midsize, and we'll leave the trucks to the end because that's kind of the big one. Midsize SUVs and crossovers. Now we're seeing that market in general die. Slow death. Terrible. And a lot of that has to do with because they're mid-size, they're bigger SUVs. Again, they're costlier. That's one of the most popular segments, and there's a lot of vehicles in that space. Think of Exploder. Think of, the Toyota 4Runners. Think of, any of those vehicles of that capacity, sort of more of a mid-size SUV. They're generally pricier vehicles. You're going to typically spend anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 in the non-luxury segment, and usually over, $80,000 plus in the luxury segment for a mid-size SUV or crossover. Think X5, X6 is a crossover. And as a result, what we're seeing in that space is a year-over-year decline of 6.3%. So yes, long-term, we've seen just the overall popularity start to waver. People are buying them. Yes, you'll still see them driving around on the road. but there's less and less and less of them selling, even with incentives. And on top of that, when we look at the midsize vehicles, month over month was a bigger hit at 7.5% sales decline from last month. Again, after post-tax time, we're getting into that time where people have finally run out of money. But let's face it, inflation's still holding. The banks, the reserves, Canada, they're not dropping interest rates. And because inflation maintains high, people are spending a lot more money on their essentials. Credit card debts are climbing. House debts, increased value of homes, people buying, new home buyers. Prices are high. And of course, that drives GDP, or basically drives the average inflation rates up. And if inflation's high and people are still spending, even though it's sort of artificially inflated, and we all know that in Canada is a big factor, a lot of it's artificial. The fact remains is it's a number that they measure. And until that number starts to come down, the banks, the reserves in US, Canada are not dropping interest rates. And because of that, these highly expensive, pricey SUVs are not selling, and they're taking a decline, no matter incentives or no incentives. And these dealers are doing anything they can, not just even at the local dealer level, but even at the corporate level. You're getting emails all the time. I get emails all the time from various different manufacturers. Hey, 4.5% here, 1.5% loyalty. Oh, we're offering $3,500 cash back. We're offering $8,500 off of this vehicle. Lots of discounts, incentives, but we're still not there. And these vehicles aren't selling. And it's more than the incentives. We need bigger incentives, and we need cost of living adjustments, i.e. inflation rates need to come down. So Bank of Canada, US, pay attention. Anyway, the big one here, of course, is full-size pickup trucks. And, we've talked about this. This has been a popular conversation. And the full-size pickup truck sales, month over month, they're down about 8.9% from last month. Yes, almost 9%. So one of the biggest losers, if you will, in terms of overall volume sales, not dollars, but volume sales. This is sales forecast. Trucks are actually gone down. Full-size pickup trucks. They're getting too expensive. People recognize that. People just generally can't afford it. And now we're transferring some of that sales popularity from full-size trucks over to the compact car space or subcompact SUVs. You see how the overall sales numbers haven't changed that much year over year. As a matter of fact, we're looking at grand totals from April of 24 this year. We're at 1.335 million units. And from April 23, we were at 1.364 million units. So it's a very comparable number overall. But instead of people buying trucks, they're now buying small cars. Do you get it? You see what's happening there? People can't afford the big trucks. And I think it's very, very telling. And so with that said, we know GM had a great results. We saw that. They bragged about it. It was a poke in the eye to Ford and Ram just... It's the beaten. It's like feeding the redheaded stepchild. It's just not doing well, not at all. Ram sales, yes, they're selling. Yes, there's a million arguments to say, yeah, they're still selling. And I've had people, reach out and drop in the comments that say, I work for a Dodge dealer. We're always busy, and I sold 2 last month, and blah blah blah. But yes, they're selling, but they're selling at a much slower pace. And is it sustainable? It doesn't look to be that way. And prices are high. They maintain that high price tag. And now this new Hurricane engine, this twin turbo inline 6, is supposed to be what the doctor ordered for Ram, but it just doesn't seem to be that way. Prices still continue to rise, and Ram seems to be unrelenting in their increases in the prices of these vehicles. So time will tell, but Ram sales are down. Ford sales are down, their ICE truck sales are down, and their Lightning sales have literally gone through the toilet. So we're seeing this big decline in overall truck sales. Yes, while GM outsold their competitors last month, and we spoke about that, they definitely had a fairly decent month, but that was only a rebound because of some of their electric vehicles, and customers were looking for that alternative that they were familiar with. That still doesn't mean it's great sales, but GM found a little bit of space and gap in there, and they were able to fill some market capital there. And you know what? The sad reality is all the other two, and even Toyotas, we're seeing, starting to see a little bit increased popularity, but because they're sell on demand, you don't fill up lots. And if customers are out kicking tires and there's no trucks to look at or test drive on the lots, they probably tend to walk away and go look at some car lot that has lots of an abundance of vehicles. But that's a little bit of a reverse psychology, because people, they'll go to Dodge and react there, or buy a Chevy. But the bottom line is, yes, Chevy had a good month, but overall truck sales are grossly down. And we're talking month over month, year over year. This is a big one for full-size trucks. We're seeing 18%. So what we saw from last year to this year, 18%, almost 20% decline. They're hemorrhaging cash, folks. The dealers can't sell pickup trucks, and we've spoken about this. Yes, we've seen the one little uptick. Chevy had a great little month. Perfect. Good for them. Yes, there, your time to bat, little Johnny. But at the end of the day, overall truck sales have taken a hit. And it doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon, at least not even with some of these incentives. And these dealers are trying to react. They are trying to provide bigger incentives. We're seeing that. Showed you one of my videos recently, $18,500 off new Ram 1500s. Right. And even aggressive APR, but they're still not selling. And Fords are declining as well, and Chevy's kind of holding, but their overall sales are down. So generally speaking, truck sales have gone through the toilet from last year, almost 20%. So we've lost, or they've lost, a lot of the market share. And again, a lot of people are making decisions, go to the small cars, the small subcompact SUVs or crossovers. It's just a lot easier pill to swallow. And until we see some big changes or swings in the market, a big aggressive price hacks on some of these pickup trucks, as well as people seeing, better opportunities with interest rates change, as well as, rates of income earners going up, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. We all know it's a ratcheting affair, especially with interest, with inflation. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. So I think what we're going to see, this natural, we saw this in the late 70s. Hey, we had produced the 70s, the late 70s into the early 80s. We remember that. For those of you who've been around here as long as I have, those were the years where they went from some of the best vehicles the late 60s could produce, hot rods, muscle cars, big engines, big block Chevys, and all that goodness. And then all of a sudden they started creating some of the biggest flops, the soft little Mustangs that look like Ford Pintos. And the Camaros turned into a big wallowy car that just didn't perform, soft little engines there, big blocks of iron with little power. We saw that transition from high performance to this soft wallowy time. And then it took many years to slowly come out of that. And I do anticipate eventually we'll come out of it. But we're seeing that we're in that space right now where there's this transition from all this greatness, high performance, new technology, power, and all of that is starting to take a hit. People don't have the money. We're going to see manufacturers start focusing on smaller cars, smaller SUVs, smaller technology, hybrid tech, electric vehicles, and other lower cost manufacturing options. And this is just where we're at. So yes, overall car sales are down. Dealers are panicking. They're trying to offer up incentives, APRs, discounts, but it's just not quite enough, folks. As we can see, the entire market is down, both month over month, year over year, and this is a devastating time in the automotive industry. But with all of that said, right there, we've been talking about trucks. What about Jeeps? Why is the CEO panicking, and what is he doing differently? Hope to see each and every one of you all in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.